Hello, I'm Eric Holdeman, and this is Disaster Zone, a show about emergencies and disasters that can happen anywhere and at any time. And here in the Puget Sound area, we know that there's always weather, and the weather brings with it windstorms, ice storms, snowstorms that often interrupt power and communications. And who better to have as our guest today than Andy Wappler? He's the Vice President of Corporate Affairs. I guess that's a high title there, Andy. Thanks for being with us and having Puget Sound Energy represented here today to talk about really 21st century communications.
Glad to do it. You know, it's funny, I actually left the weather world 5 years ago, so I've been a PSC for 5 years. And when I left the weather to go to the utility, I actually had this idea that I'd be leaving the weather behind. Yeah. Didn't leave it behind at all.
It follows you.
It followed me, and so did communications, and I can't get over how different communications is, in the last 5 years, and what it lets us do now to communicate to people during the weather when maybe the lights blink or something else is going on. Pretty exciting.
Okay. And how's that? Has that just been a seamless transition? I mean, how is it significantly different from what you were doing as a weather forecaster to now being a corporate
It's amazingly different, although there's one similarity. A newsroom during a storm is busy. There's all kinds of stuff going on. People are really focused. So is the utility. And it's interesting to see, to me, it feels the most like being in broadcasting or in journalism when there's a storm. The difference, and the one thing, though, that I've really come to enjoy is typically if you're in broadcasting, you're pretty much thinking about that day and maybe that broadcast that's ahead of you. The utility business is a really long-term business. We build big facilities. We're just now rebuilding the Snoqualmie Falls hydro plant. It was built in the 1890s. So we build things that last a long time that customers depend on every day. So it's interesting. When things are really happening, it's very of the moment, like broadcasting. But we think on a much longer term time scale, and we know that when we fail as utility, it really impacts people. Whereas, if I got the forecast wrong, well, people kind of
maybe they'll forget about
once
it
in a while. Yeah, they'll forget about the next time you're on.
All right. Well, everyone might not fully understand the size and scope of the service area and services you provide. Can you give us a little background on Puget Sound Energy?
Sure. And and it is complicated. The utility map of this area, you try and puzzle that one out. It would be a 1,000-piece puzzle that would be very challenging. We serve, though, 11 counties in western Washington, as well as Kittitas County in central Washington. And we are both an electric company and a natural gas company. And for most customers in King County, we provide both, electric and natural gas, places like Bellevue, Kirkland, most of the suburbs. But if you're in Seattle, you're likely a Seattle City Light electric customer, but still our natural gas customer. And the same in Snohomish County. We provide natural gas in Snohomish County, but of course they have Snohomish PUD for the electric. It is confusing, though, for people, and many people don't know even which company serves them. And that's actually one of the reasons we all work together to a fair amount, because we know in the end we're all kind of those guys and they, and we got to keep the lights on. So we work a lot together. It's an amazing company, though, in terms of our diversity of places we serve, from small towns to big cities, and then also how we make power today. We're the second largest utility owner and operator of wind power in the country, and yet we're also one of the oldest hydro operators. All these different ways of getting energy to people, and then some new technologies today, solar, electric vehicles. It's a really dynamic time for a business that I think people tend to think, well, it's like Thomas Edison's time. Not so much.
Really.
A lot of changes.
A lot of changes technologically. And, good transition really to our topic today, talking about the changes in how we communicate as people within our families, and then businesses and government with customers and citizens. I've seen this revolution happen in the last 6 years. And really, it's been social media to a great degree there. So what are some of those changes you've seen and experienced in reacting to?
I thought about that in preparation for this, and my dad started working at Cairo in 1969. So May of 1969, and you think about that time, we had a couple of daily newspapers in town, a couple of news radio stations, and then 3 local affiliate stations, 1 independent station that would show Brakeman Bill, the cartoon show, and then you had a public television station, And that was about it. So if you were a news consumer, you had more newspapers and more radio news, not many choices on TV. Nobody had cable. There was no cable news. There was no weather channel. So a really different landscape. And you knew back then that if there was something that was in the paper that day or had been on the news, that if you mentioned it to your neighbor or your friend at work, they'd say, oh, yeah, I saw that too. Now, today, you have a lot more choices as a consumer, which is great. Lots of different news channels, more channels both on broadcast TV and cable, not to mention the web and everything else that comes with it. But the connection is different today, where if you see something in the news and you mention it to a friend or a neighbor, they probably say, I didn't see that because I was watching this while you were surfing the web there. So it's interesting. There are a lot more choices, more ways to get the news that matters to you. But I think there's a lot of sharing and commonality that used to be there that isn't there today. So we've gained one thing, which is customization and the ability to get exactly that little weird niche item that interests us, but we've lost something that is a shared item that we can all say, hey, everybody's on the same page, we have the same information about something. Yeah. Gain something, give something up.
And how about the move towards just mobility? I heard this media piece, maybe it was NPR, I know, talking about how ABC stations are going to, in some major metropolitan areas, be giving to their customers an app where they can watch not recorded TV, but live TV on their mobile devices. I mean, that's a huge deal.
It's a huge shift, in particular for me growing up and then my working world. You know, there's the network and then there's your local affiliate. And the local affiliate was really a product of, back in the day, you needed an antenna to reach the people in that area. Well, now if you don't need that antenna and you can use an app or web streaming or something else, the network still may be putting out its program, but what's the place for the local affiliate? And that's a challenge for broadcasting, and where I think it's a challenge for our community, and where I think of it as a challenge for my company is you still need that local creator of content so that people actually have that news. And it's wonderful if you can stream something on your phone that came from the network, but where's that local paper, TV station, radio station to actually generate content in the first place? Yeah. It's a challenge.
For you to be able to get to your customers, in fact, this thing. So you were part of the mainstream media as the weather forecaster, the guy we always blamed.
Yes, indeed. Or thanked, I hope, once in a while.
Yeah. And so what's happening with television, radio, and newspapers? You kind of described the old school, and you got the segmentation talk, but how about how they cover the news and especially emergencies and disasters?
A couple of things that are really, I think, a positive today that are in broadcasting and in media. The immediacy of it, the ability to get out live, to take you places is really unmatched today. You know, when I was a kid, I'd go to the station with my dad, and they would go out live, say in 1970, twice a year. Seafair boat races, Seafair parade. There's your twice a year. That's the only time you're going to go out live. Yeah, that was it. You know, the rest of it, that old joke, film at 11, it really meant that, because it meant that on the news at 5 o'clock, which was maybe a half an hour news, it was an anchor reading a story after a story after a story, and very few pictures, and none of it live. Well, today, especially during an emergency, it's fantastic that TV stations can literally use technology that fits in a backpack for a reporter to be able to be live anywhere, to really take you as the viewer at home into something like the snowstorm. We had the big one last winter. You could watch at home and see road conditions and other things that you never could have seen on TV 30, 40 years ago because of the technology. So it's fantastic in those situations. The challenge, though, is the ability, if you're the viewer, to digest all that information and to know kind of where to turn. It's almost too many choices sometimes to know where to turn. But I think in an emergency, the ability of broadcasting to get out, and as well as newspapers digitally and the other platforms, the ability to help you at home look and make good decisions about where to go and what to do, the ability to get that picture to you is it's unequaled. We've never been in that position, and that is really fantastic. And we saw that a year and a half ago, that big January 2012 snowstorm. People couldn't leave their homes, but they could really see what was happening around them. And that was a big plus for us, in that when we worked with the media and told people what was happening, they could see what was happening. And now, because of things like mobile, even if the power isn't on and your big TV doesn't work, hey, I can see it on my phone. And being able to see it on your phone in a power outage, fantastic. So that's a big plus.
Okay. And what about the old news cycle? It used to be, and even in my time, we'd say, well, they're trying to get it for the evening news, they got to get it by 3 so they can put it on at 5 and all that. How's the 24/7 news cycle impacted everything?
It's really amazing, and where it's impacted certainly for us as an organization where the media is interested in what we do. They want to know about a storm, they want to know about a power outage, or even anything else, an energy efficiency program, a new wind plant, whatever it would be. You're right, there is no news cycle. The news is on all the time. Really, I think the game when it comes, if you have a website for news, is you always want items that say updated. And why it even has the time, so updated at 3:57 p.m. That's to get you to click and look again. That's great because it means if something happens, we don't have to wait until film at 11, but it means that it is a nonstop process. The other thing that's happened that we really notice as a company providing a service is that our customer behavior has changed a good deal because we now expect to be able to get whatever we want whenever we want it. And that's a wonderful thing, but it's not always a realistic thing in every case.
News on demand.
News on demand, or any service on demand. What I think is interesting is the ability of information on demand has even changed, like how long people are expecting to, say, be out of power during a storm.
Yes.
It's different.
Yeah.
And when you're a customer, when you've been able to do things like, hey, I'm going to check my phone and see a tweet, you kind of expect that, shouldn't we be able to tweet the power back on? We can't. Now, where it sort of intersects is we'll tweet about what we're doing to get the power back on, but that technology doesn't change the fact that if a 50-foot tree has fallen and taken down 2 blocks of wire, it still takes a gang of people out at 2 a.m. to put that back up again. And the technology we enjoy as consumers has helped us with information gathering for that, but it doesn't help the chainsaw, post hole digger, et cetera kind of work that has to happen.
You can't wave a magic wand and make that tree.
There's no reset button for the power system. The technology, though, has helped in terms of our ability to get more information from the field, as well as get information back out to our crews. But when they actually are on the ground doing that work, the work probably does look a lot like it would have looked 30 or 40 years ago.
Okay, and there's this interplay within mainstream media now between social media and their news, if you will. How do you see that playing out? The social media aspect of their coverage and then their traditional, whether it's a newspaper, a radio, or television, they're all using that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I left just about the time that was starting, and it was interesting to me to wonder, where's this going to go? I remember when we first built a website at Cairo in about 1995, we thought that people would use the web to look up what time TV shows were on, like as if it was TV Guide. We just totally missed it because the technology was so different and so foreign. And I think now media really uses it in a different way, where before it was purely promotional. It was going to be promotional, and here we're going to be on, watch us then. And now there's a lot more interplay where it isn't just broadcasting through that, it's really, hey, they want to get information back from their viewers. Tell us about the traffic accident, tell us about breaking news, that kind of thing. So it becomes a two-way channel, which is fantastic. And it's really the same thing that we're trying to do then with social media as a company. We're used to a very traditional broadcast model of, we have information, we put it in your bill stuffer, we send it to you. Right. Now we really realize that, like the media, social media is turning out to be a great interaction tool for us with customers, where we can send information out to customers and they can send it back to us.
Yeah, you can really have a conversation.
And that's what people expect. People expect the conversation, and the sweet spot in there is, I think when social media began for us as a utility, which we had our first Twitter account in 2009, which for utility made us kind of early, didn't make us early for everybody else. Yeah. But when we did that, we were worried of how we're going to keep up, because we won't have an answer for everybody. Yeah. But just being out and being able to explain the process to people helps a lot. You'll still have people who say, I want an exact answer for me, but most people just want to know, are you out? Are you working on the problem? Are you open about it? Yeah. And then they're okay. And if you're not out, then they start filling in the blanks with their own information, and you don't want to be there.
Okay. Well, already been halfway through the show. And for you folks at home, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be asking Andy Wappler about how emergencies and disasters are turning into reality TV. So watch this message and we'll be right back.
The Regional Public Information Network is your one-stop resource for news about local and regional disruptions. Go to rpin.org for breaking news on everything from road closures and weather warnings to regional emergencies. RPIN brings you information from more than 60 responding agencies serving King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties. Subscribe and you'll receive news alerts wherever you are by email, text messaging, or pager. Visit us at rpin.org and download emergency contact cards for your family. Be in touch, stay in touch.
Hi, I'm Eric Holdeman. We're doing Disaster Zone today, and the guest is Andy Wappler with Puget Sound Energy. And I told the audience, Andy, we'd be back to talk about how emergencies and disasters sometimes are really like reality TV, and you got folks like Bucket Man.
Yes, we do, because we realized during a storm, first of all, it's tough. If you're at home and you're out of power, it stinks. It's kind of fun for maybe a couple hours. You get the Monopoly board out if you still have a board game. And after that, it's not fun. And in particular today, when people are even more dependent on things like the power, you may not even have that board game or book or something else you would have diverted yourself with. It's even worse than it was. And when people working at home and things, expect to have a computer, all those things you expect to have, you don't have. So we know when a storm happens, it will turn into reality TV. And we know one of the characters in reality TV will be Angry Man. And the Angry Man is the person who's home and they're in a bad mood because the power's out, understandably. But really the key then to our kind of end of this whole reality show is really being open and showing customers, here's what we're doing. So I like to tell folks I work with that there's sort of the angry person at home in that reality show, so we have to have bucket truck guy on reality TV. And I'm so proud of the men and women that I work with who are making it happen during a storm. Their fight, there's no quitting them. They know the people at home need the power. But being open as a company or any kind of an organization about what you're doing, it's a challenging thing culturally. But as people begin to see that, hey, our side of the story is interesting to our customers really appreciate knowing, because if you are at home in the dark, your reaction is going to be, I don't see the trucks. They probably forgot about me. They're probably not doing anything. So it's a chance to kind of level that out and have people see, oh, okay, wow, there's a lot of people working on this problem. And it's an important balancing act. It's also a nice way to have the people who are doing the work get their due, because they are working so hard 24/7. But it is a reality TV world. We like watching all those shows about crab fishing and loggers and undercover bosses and everything else. It's a good chance to kind of leverage that interest that the public has with us and having a great story that people appreciate of how do those crews work, what are they doing, it's dangerous, it's tough work, it's the middle of the night. So really we realize in a storm that being comfortable with being our own reality show is probably a good place to be.
Okay. And so what do you tell your emergency crews? They're out there, like you say, working all hours in terrible conditions many times. What do you tell them about interacting with the media and the customers?
We always want them to interact with customers and the media if they're comfortable as well. Now, if they're not, for some reason, call headquarters, so to speak, and we'll find a way to work it out. But certainly with customers, because our customers know that that person who's out there is out there for them, is working hard, and really has the scoop on what's happening in that couple of blocks. That person working on your block may not know the bigger picture, but chances are if you're the customer, you're not that interested in that. You're interested in my neighborhood and my block.
That's power from there to my house.
Yeah,
right?
And the ability to explain it, because a lot of it, if you're at home, doesn't make sense at first. You go, wait, why is my side of the street in the dark? Why is that side of the street in the light? Why are they first? Why did this happen? So that ability to explain it face to face is really important. And our crews are very knowledgeable. Many of them have lived and worked in the same area for a long time. Every storm is different, they'll tell you. But for a lot of them, it's 10, 20, 30 years of being out there. So having them be able to talk to our customers, talk to the media, it's great because they're really the experts in what happens. They'll tell me what to do and I'll repeat it, but why not just go straight to the source?
In the Army, we called it ground truth.
Yeah,
They have
that's
ground
exactly
truth because they're right there, out there on the ground.
And they've seen, to say, a lot of storms. They're all different, but a lot of those folks, they've been doing it way back to the Arctic Express in 1990 or the Hanukkah Eve of 2006 or whatever the famous storm is. Chances are they were there.
Yeah, my first big one was Inauguration Day, 1993. So.
Yeah, a memorable one.
Yes. So there's another impact, kind of going back to the social media aspect. Now you have citizens and customers out there with cameras taking video and posting pictures. How's that impacted your ability either to know what's going on or to understand it better?
It can be very helpful if we get a picture. Now, the first thing for customers, of course, is stay back. There is no safety consideration that's worth, that picture is great, it's not worth anybody getting hurt. So number one, if you're a customer and you're not sure about a situation, stay back. Now, if you can take a picture and you're in a safe place, that's great. But again, stay back. But it's interesting, even our crews are doing some of that. Just recently, when we had some lightning and storms come through the area, some of our crews were taking some cell phone pictures, and we used those and we posted those to Facebook and out to Twitter that helped our customers see, wow, real time. These pictures are from the Bremerton area that I saw. Wow, here's what the crews are doing in Bremerton right now. So the ability to do things like take a picture, shoot a video, it's great if our customers can do it, and it's great if our crews can do it, because that inside look really gives people that perspective of what's happening, why it's happening. And as we talked about earlier, that's the picture that helps you see that, oh, there isn't a reset button. This isn't something I can just turn on and off again. This is a tree, on a car, on a roof, etc. That's going to take some work. So it's great to get those kinds of pictures and take people into that story.
You mentioned that safety aspect. It's an unfortunate incident that stuck in my brain about after a storm, a gentleman was out walking his dog, did not touch wires, but the ground was wet, the wires were live, and unfortunately he and his pet were both electrocuted, and they weren't even on the wires.
Nope.
So you're right, being safe is critical on that.
And that aspect of the electricity, you do not have to touch the wire. If the ground is damp, it's dangerous to be there. And people often wonder, well, gee, should I call? Maybe somebody's already called in. Go ahead and call. If we've been called, that's great. But we always want to hear from a customer. If they're concerned about an emergency situation, don't worry about being the 10th guy to call. That's great. We'd rather have the safety instead.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question that wasn't on our list, but I know you can answer this. So you were forecasting the weather, right? Now, in many respects, you're forecasting when the power will come back on and where it's going to come back on. Which one would you rather do? What's the difficulties of forecasting that power and when it's going to be back on?
A couple of things are challenges. Now, in both, it's interesting, there's some parallels to both. In both, technology is helping us. There is a lot more technology in terms of models that guide the weather prediction today that do a lot better than they did. On the other hand, customer expectations are rising about the accuracy, so it's a bit of a challenge. And there's the same thing then technologically on the outage side. We have new technologies today that help us get more visibility into the system than we had. Those technologies can help us do a bit more predictive modeling of how a storm is impacting us. But a couple of wild cards out there that really the technology is great, but last winter we had a big storm in January 2012. We had snow, then in many places we had freezing rain. A day or two later we had some wind. A day or two after that we had some more wind. So your initial outage restoration that you made on the first day, well, that was based on the first snow. Now we'll throw in the freezing rain. There comes the windstorm. Well, there comes another windstorm. So the challenge can often be you make the restoration based on the first event, and very often here when it's stormy, we get multiple events. That's really a challenge in terms of getting that power back. But you can look at a lot of things like with the weather. If you're an experienced weather forecaster, you have some sense of how certain types of storms tend to impact the area. The same thing in terms of the outages, where you can look at the kind of storm, get a sense ahead of time, is this going to be a big storm? Is this going to be just something small? That gives us the ability then to do things like bring in extra crews to bring in all the logistics that go for supporting crews, even our own local crews. If they're out in the field multiple days, they got to eat, they got to sleep, all these different things. Yeah. So we use a lot of that weather forecasting to look ahead, kind of categorize it and say, okay, we think we're going to be at this level, let's mobilize ahead of time. And that's something that our customers don't see, but typically we're coordinating with local governments, the Weather Service, the state EMS, all these folks to try and be ready ahead of time. And thank goodness we are. It cuts a couple days off the back end of that storm.
Okay. Well, we only have a couple minutes left here, but I always told my staff when we have a power outage in a disaster that someone's going to die from improper use of a generator. You got a minute or so you can just talk about safe generator operation.
Generators are wonderful, but first read the instruction manual. And I know that's one of those things that we don't tend to like to do, but read the instruction manual, keep that generator outside, away from buildings. The exhaust is poisonous from carbon monoxide, so if it's in a garage or any place close to the house, that can come into the house. And generators get hot, that exhaust gets hot. So if you tuck it right next to your house to keep it dry, it could set your house on fire. So really read those instructions carefully. We have information about generator safety at psc.com. We're also partnering with the Red Cross and the Safe in the Sound program. And go to safeinthesound.org. Lots of good emergency preparation information there as well.
Okay. Actually, in the future, it'd be great. Maybe we could just do a show on generator safety.
Sure.
Did one years and years ago, but it would be a good one to update with you.
It's a good topic.
So I want to thank you for being on the show
Absolutely.
today with us, Andy. Great information. And should I tell my relatives not to come until the 5th of July? That's what generally I say for...
Even the 10th of July is a safer bet. We got that little strike zone in the summer.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for being here with us, and look forward to future programs with you. So this brings us to the end of our show for today. Thanks for tuning in and learning more about what you and others can do to become better prepared for disasters. Remember, if you're going to get prepared, today is a good day to start. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.